본 행사는 제20회 서울 와우북 페스티벌의 성과를 함께 나누는 자리이며 문화체육관광부 한국국제문화교류진흥원의 쌍방향 국제문화협업 지원 사업으로 진행되고 있습니다. 안녕하세요. 제 소개 먼저 드리겠습니다. 오늘 이렇게 김투희 작가님과 함께 대화를 나눌 모더레이터 요조입니다. 다들 잘 이미 옆에 나와 계셔서 보고 계시겠지만 오늘의 주인공 김투희 작가님은 한캐나다 수교 60주년 기념으로 추진된 한캐나다 엔솔로지 프로젝트의 행사 참여를 위해서 한국에 참여를 해주셨어요. 그래서 정말 길지 않은 시간 동안 한국을 아주 마음속 깊이 느끼고 또 즐기고 계신 것처럼 보여집니다. 오늘만 해도 리허설 시간에 계속 안 오셔가지고 왜 작가님이 안 오실까 궁금했는데 그 서울 산책을 해야 한다는 이유로 리허설 시간에 계속 안 오시다가 가슴팍에 녹차 아이스크림을 이렇게 귀엽게 묻히고 이렇게 아이처럼 나타나 주셨어요.
Yes. I'm really sorry. Yes, and I didn't have time to go back to the hotel to change. So this is the proof, but you can say it's contemporary art. Yes. And when I saw this, I said, oh, maybe I can put more, of green tea, of matcha on me. And my liaison, Sunyan, she said, no, don't put more. Okay.
근데 이 마크조차도 너무나도 멋지게 보이는 거 있죠. 정말로. 그래서 이것이 정말 어떤 한 사람이 가진 매력이자 힘이구나라는 걸 다시 한번 실감하면서 정말 기쁜 마음으로 오늘의 주인공을 다시 한번 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 여러분 기쁜 박수로 맞아주십시오. 김투희 작가님이십니다. 작가님, 제가 이거부터 여쭤봐야 되겠어요. 저는 좀 오늘 이제 처음 책으로만 작가님을 알다가 오늘 이렇게 처음 뵙고, 있는 것인데, 저는 이제 책에서 만난 작가님은 상당히 정말 고요한 호수 같은 그런 사람일 것 같다는 느낌을 받았습니다. 그래서 굉장히 조심스럽게 질문해야 할 것 같고 대답하시는 것도 굉장히 아주 심혈을 기울여서 경청해야 될 것만 같은 그런 만반의 준비를 하고 왔는데요. 정말 이렇게 에너지가 넘치고 사랑스럽고 정말 진짜 러블리라는 표현이 너무나 적절한 사람일 줄은 꿈에도 몰랐어요. 그래서 좀 약간 충격적으로 사랑스러운 느낌을 받았습니다. 근데 저뿐만 아니라 여기 계신 분들도 어쩌면 그거를 이제 어깨를 들썩거릴 때부터 뭔가 이상하다. 이게 아닌데 라는 생각을 하셨던 분들도 계셨을 거라고 생각이 들고 이런 관객의 독자의 반응을 많이 들으셨을 것 같다는 생각이 갑자기 들어가지고요. 어떠신가요?
At the beginning, when the book came out in Quebec, it was still, unknown. And there was a group of readers who invited me over. And there was an older man who came in. And at the end, he came up to me and he said, after reading the book, he said that he was sure that the author is very quiet and delicate. And so he thought that he would need the hearing aid in order to hear me talk, right? And usually he doesn't put the hearing aid. But that night he said, oh, I have to bring this hearing aid because this author will speak like this. And then he said, he put the volume up when he came in. And I started talking and it startled him. He said, "You are so loud." And so he had to take off the machine because it was too loud. And the difference is that I think I am the quiet person. Because when I write, I think I write from my years as a child, the younger version of me, or more of the Vietnamese girl than the Canadian girl. Because from 0 to 10, I was born in 1968, and so it was at the peak, or the first peak of the American War. We call it the American War, but of course it's the Vietnam War, as you know it. And so it was conflict, a country at war. And then the war ended in 1975. I was 7 years old. And then the communists won the war. And they came in and stayed with us, right? And because they were in the same house, we were under surveillance 24 hours a day. So we could no longer talk or do anything because they watched us, right? And so I didn't learn any emotions or sensations during all those years. Because when you're under surveillance, you don't want to speak so that your loved ones don't have to bear the weight of information, right? Because like me, I was 7, 8, 9, and 10 years old during those 3 years. I had to lie in class and say, no, I had never seen my parents listening to the radio or reading a book or discussing about XYZ issues. And so in the house, nobody talked anymore. And when you're a child, then you don't learn any words. So it felt like everything was silent, not only in the family, but the whole city, and then the whole country, because you cannot trust who will denounce you. Not because they want to, but because they were forced to do that. And so I feel like Vietnam, I grew up in a Vietnam at war, and then for 3 years, a Vietnam in silence. And then there was a refugee camp. And then when we first arrived in Quebec, I didn't speak French. I had to learn French. And so again, to me, I was silent. Now everybody talked, but I couldn't talk. So I was in silence again. But in Quebec, I learned so many emotions because as Canadians, they always ask you how you feel. Asians, we don't care so much about that, right? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you frustrated? Are you irritated? So many emotions, adjectives, and so I learned one emotion at a time in Quebec, and I become this thing. I don't know what happened to me, but this is what you see is really the Canadian version. And when I write, I think you get to see the Vietnamese version of me, and that's why there's a kind of I am both. It's a mix. It's a cocktail of the two sides of me, and I think if I talk this much when I was younger, I would never have been able to write, because writing for me, you need to be quiet and observe a lot. And now I'm just too excited. So I don't think I would have enough to write. So silence is good. I would try to be silent.
이런 작가님의 말씀을 듣고 나니까 지금 이렇게 보여주시는 에너지가 너무 경이롭다고 여겨지고, 그 소설 속에서도 여러분 다 읽어보셨겠지만 어린 시절 거의 표현을 하지 않고, 표현을 하더라도 거짓말 하는데 더 특화된 어떤 제한된 어떤 감정 표현의 시절을 거쳐서 남들보다 뒤늦게 획득한 감정과 뒤늦게 획득한 언어들로 정말 그 적절한 속담인지 모르겠습니다만 왜 늦게 배운 도둑질이 무섭다 이런 속담도 있듯이 뭔가 우리한테는 이미 식상해져 버린 어떤 툴이죠. 감정, 느끼는 감정이나 말하는 어떤 그런 게 우리한테는 너무나도 익숙하고 좀 이제는 좀 지루하고 너무나 평범한 어떤 툴이 여전히 작가님한테는 너무나 나를 즐겁게 해주는 그런 놀이 도구와도 같은 어떤 그런 기능을 하는 것처럼도 여겨져서 진짜 좀 경이롭다는 생각이 드네요. 그리고 또 오늘 이제 자리해주신 이 프로젝트의 일환으로 또 책에도 참여를 해주셨습니다. 한국과 캐나다의 여러 작가님들께서 함께 집필해주신 엔솔로지 작품이죠. 아직 오지 않은 미래를 기억해라는 책에 이제 판사님이라는 제목의 글로 또 참여를 해주셨습니다. 오늘이 이제 마지막 일정으로 알고 있는데 좀 소회를 들어볼까요? 한국에 오셔서 이렇게 여러 한국의 독자들 그리고 한국의 여러 거리들 이렇게 경험하시면서 어떤 거를 느끼셨는지 좀 궁금합니다.
I have been watching so many Korean movies. I'm really a fan of Korean movies. Music, I don't know enough. Probably because I'm too old. BTS is not really for me. So I don't know anything about BTS, but I know that K-pop is a thing. And so I'm really, and I love movies since I was little. So I watch a lot of movies. And even on the plane to come here, luckily it was a very long flight. So I get to see 3 movies, all Korean movies on the airplane. And I cried so much because I think I can share with you the sadness of a country with so many challenges and so many struggles. And it's incredible that in a very short period of time, in peacetime, that you can soar, like a phoenix. It's incredible. So I cry not only because of the struggles you've been through, but how you stood back up and shine. For Korea, to me, in the world, I think like Canada, we're small countries. But somehow Korea is on the map. And for those who have been to Montreal or to Canada, at the beginning, Thai food was very trendy, and then Vietnamese, and then Japanese. And now nobody talks about these 3 cuisines. Everybody is about Korean food, yes, and so popular. And so I have such an admiration for Korean culture, and culture of course is supported by the Koreans, people, and that strength and the complexity of a country who has gone through so much, and to stand back up. And so I am certain, I have not read many books from Korean authors, but I've had the chance to be on the same panel, listening to them. I fell in love with the sophistication and the complexity of the stories. So I'm sharing with you that I have already called my publisher in Quebec, and I said, please, I want you to publish Korean authors, and I will be the curator for these authors. And they have accepted. So, and I called yesterday at midnight. I came back to my room, my hotel room at midnight. I was so tired, but I said, I want to be sure, because in November, some authors are coming to Montreal from Korea. And I said, you have to meet with my publisher. We have to do something. And I don't know what yet. And I don't know how it works, but I called my publisher, what can we do? And she said, okay, we set up a meeting and a dinner and we plan something and let's publish Korean authors translated into French. So it's done. We will have Korean authors translated for, at least for me, so I can read, in French. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm giving you the news. Maybe it's it's not official. Nobody wants to come. But I still want to invite the authors to have their books being translated in Canada. So this is in French. There's a word for that. Is coup de foudre. Coup de foudre is when you meet that person and you fall in love right away without knowing the person, and it's like being hit by lightning. You know, you don't know what happened to you. You just being fascinated, and so I think there's a love story here. This is the beginning of a new friendship between me and you, even though I've been here only for 4 days. But yes, you cannot explain love, you know? Love happens. And then, so yeah, love happened. And I've eaten so much that this dress has a belt, but I cannot put the belt on. So yes, and tonight apparently my publisher will take me to a Korean barbecue, so I eat more again. It's terrible because everything is so good. Yeah, so that's what has been happening to me for the last 4 years, 4 days. In my mind, it's 4 years, but it's been only 4 days. And now I think I'm in love with you. I want to hear you sing. I was going to ask you, when can I go hear you sing? Is there a show tomorrow? No?
아니, 안 합니다. 안타깝게도.
아.
예, 죄송합니다. 예. 오늘은 제가 작가로서 참여한 거라서, 예, 노래할 기회가 주어지지 않지만 작가님을 위해서라면 무반주로라도 제가 노래를. 아, 지금? 아, 지금 안 돼요. 지금 저기 아까 제가 말씀드렸다시피 저 문화체육관부 관광부하고 한국국제문화교류진흥원 담당자한테 혼이 날 수도 있으니까 오늘은 이제 주인공한테 이제 초점을 맞춘 자리로서 예, 사석에서 나중에 기회가 되면 제가 무반주로라도.
In Montreal. Ah. Okay, you have to come in November. You can stay at my house. Yes, I have room at
네,
my house. So
당장
now she's
합주를
forced to
잡아야 되겠네.
accept my invitation.
아, 당연히 예, yes, yes, yes. 네, 당장 합주를 합주 예약을 하겠습니다.
Could I go back to? I really want to congratulate the team for having chosen the title. You said "Remembering the Future Yet to Come," and at first, when I saw it, I said, "Oh, is it the past, the future, or the present?" And in my mind, I always have this confusion about the past, the future, because you have to remember a future which is not there yet, but it works in Vietnamese. The Vietnamese language doesn't have past tense or future. We are always in the present. I don't know how is Korean. Korean, you have past tense, and you have future tense. Okay, in Vietnamese you don't have. Yeah, you start with on Monday. Blah, 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 and you don't repeat the word Monday or next week or next year. You just say it once at the beginning, and after that, you just continue with the verb, and it seems like to be in the present, but everybody knows that it's on Monday or next year. And so when I learned French, and French has so many tenses, very complicated, and I'm always confused with tenses, and so remembering the future yet to come now my wires are completely going, where am I? And but at the same time, it's very simple for me because all of that is in the present. My past is still on me, right? And the future is in here because you're dreaming of what you're going to do next. And so it's very strange in my brain that we divide the past from the present, from the future. Because if you don't have a past, you cannot exist. If we don't have a foundation under this building, you cannot have the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. And so it's all in one time zone for me. But the title is so beautiful for that, to play with time and the concept of, how do we want to remember the future? Because we're already planning what we are, where we're going, what we want to do. So thank you for the title.
네, 저도 이 제목을 보면서 되게 좋았는데요. 일단 우리가 미래라는 서두로 시작을 할 때 보통 꿈꾼다, 상상한다, 기대한다 이러한 단어를 쓰죠. 기억한다라는 것은 이미 완료된 것을 사후적으로 기억하는 것이기 때문에 우리는 보통 과거의 어떤 것을 서두에 두고 이제 기억한다라는 이제 어미를 사용하게 되는데, 우리가 이렇게 오지 않은 미래를 이야기하면서 그것을 기억한다라는 어떤 그런 표현을 사용하게 될 때 우리는 꿈꾼다, 소망한다 이럴 때 우리가 조금 더 막연하고 모호하게 그려지는 어떤 이미지들이 기억한다라는 표현을 쓰는 순간 이미 정확한 것으로, 이미 더 또렷해진 것으로, 그리고 내가 기어이 그것을 만들어내겠다는 아주 강한 다짐의 표현으로 또 받아들여지게 되는 것이죠. 그렇다 보니까 아직 일어나지 않은 일임에는 틀림없지만 나는 아직 오지 않은 미래를 아주 올바른 방식으로, 그리고 우리에게 더 필요한 방식으로 아주 잘 기억하리라라고 하는 아주 명징한 의지의 표현으로 받아들여졌습니다. 그래서 너무 좋았고, 다시 한번 그 리스트에 킴투이 작가님이 함께 해주셔서 너무나도 영광이고 독자로서 행복하다는 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다.
It was an honor for me to be invited. And when I got the invitation, like I've told you, I said, who in Korea knows I exist? And I asked my agent, I said, could you find out how come Korea knows? But is it surveillance AI or something? But I said yes right away, because just the combination of Canada and Korea, it's just a match that we don't see or don't hear very often. And to me, it was so important for me to come. So it was the main event for me in the fall, in the calendar. I just push away everything so that I can come to Korea, because first of all, because I love your movies so much. So I want to see for real how it works here in Korea.
네, 너무 감사합니다. 아니, 누가 나를 알까라고 지금 말씀해 주셨는데, 정말 많이 알고 계세요. 정말 세계적인 작가시잖아요. 루라는 작품을 통해서 정말 세계적인 작가가 되셨고, 저는 이제 그 책을 읽으면서, 뭐랄까, 소설이지만 전형적인 소설의 형식을 따르지 않는, 그러니까 뭐랄까 어떤 이미지 하나가 뭔가 선형적으로 이렇게 따라가지 않는, 그러니까 과거로 갔다가 현재로 갔다가 이렇게 막 왔다 갔다 하면서 이렇게 또 하나의 이야기 흐름을 따라서 이렇게 왔다 갔다 하면서 자유롭게 이어지는 그 구성이 너무 신기하고 독특하다라고 여겨졌는데요. 아까 말씀하신 나는 과거와 현재와 미래가 이렇게 동떨어져 있는 것처럼 여겨지지 않고 좀 헷갈린다라는 말씀을 해주시니까 비로소 좀 이해가 되는 느낌이 들었습니다. 잘 아시겠지만 이제 다 그 작가님은 경력이 굉장히 버라이어티 하시죠. 법조인이기도 하셨고, 그리고 레스토랑을 운영하시면서 베트남 요리를 또 선보이는 일을 하시기도 하셨습니다. 그러다가 그렇게 이른 나이라고는 할 수 없는 시기에 소설가로서 이렇게 데뷔를 하게 되셨는데, 소설을 쓰게 된 계기가 어떻게 찾아오게 됐는지 너무 궁금하더라고요. 좀 들어볼 수 있을까요?
You know, I didn't know that I could be a writer. Because if you want to be a writer, you need to master at least one language, you know, as a tool so that you can write, so that you have the words to express your emotions or to tell the stories. But I still make mistakes in French. And I cannot write in Vietnamese because I stopped going to school in Vietnamese when I was 10, when we left Vietnam. And how would I say it? If I had to write in Vietnamese, I wouldn't have any emotions because I didn't learn any emotions in Vietnamese. And you know, in French, you have gender. You have feminine or masculine. Yes, like a chair is feminine, and what is masculine? Catastrophe. Catastrophe. Oh no, catastrophe is female. I always forget because in my mind, catastrophe is male, right?
La
It
maison,
cannot
la
be
maison.
as masculine. And so I have to think every time, catastrophe, is it female or male? And so I make so many mistakes still today that I never thought that I could become a writer. So it came to me really as an accident because I had the restaurant and I fell asleep a lot when I went home at night. We finished at 1 or 2 in the morning, and my children were still very young, and one of the two is autistic, and so he didn't sleep at night. So I fall asleep all the time. So if you let me at the red lights, more than 10 seconds, or no, 3 seconds, I fall asleep. And if you fall asleep, you know, your foot would get lighter on the brake and the car continue and make accidents. And that's how I started writing, in the sense that I started taking notes. And it came to me, that way, accidentally. And I didn't know that I was writing. I was just keeping my brain going at red lights to not have accidents. And I didn't know then that, you know, my years when I study in translation, those years helped me a lot to understand the structure of a language, not only in French, but also in English. So basically you're comparing languages, meaning you're comparing cultures. And because I was learning French and English at the same time, I'm comparing with Vietnamese. And so all of a sudden, you feel like you're getting into the culture of each language, right? And revisiting what you know. And in French, and that's why, you know, when I learned the word aimer, for example, in French, you have only aimer. But in English, you have like and love. There's already a difference between the two. And then I said, oh, how do we say that in Vietnamese? And I realized that in Vietnamese, you have at least 5 different verbs for the verb to love. Because, and I wrote it in Ru, that, you know, when you love a friend is different than when you love a dog, or when it's a long relationship between a husband and a wife. The verb contains resistance, compromise, and endurance, a lot of work. We know that marriage is work. For the Vietnamese, we don't talk about love. It's endurance, like an athlete. And there's one verb only for love, for passionate love, right? Which is you. And it doesn't exist in French. When you say in French, je t'aime, it could be anything, right? It could be as a friend, as whatever. Whereas in Vietnamese, when you say yêu, is necessarily between two people who've just met and who are lovers and who are passionately in love with each other. And that verb you cannot use for a couple who has been together for a long time, because there's no endurance, there's no pain in you, right? And at the same time, there's no ambiguity. It's not friendship. It's really passionate love. And I thought, that's so beautiful. So that's what I learned with translation. And then with law, as you know, every word is so important in a contract or in a legislation. So I learned the weight of every word, and in a text of law, you can not have too many words. And every punctuation is important. A comma is different than a semicolon, right? And so that's what I learned. And then in the kitchen, when I cooked, I learned that you cannot cheat. You need time. You need patience. If you want to make a soup, it cannot be done in 1 hour. Even if you use a pressure cooker, the flavors need time in order to marry each other, to become one. And so I learned to be patient in the kitchen. And all of that contributed, I think, to my writing. But I would say I would not be able to write this way without my autistic son. Because he sees the world very differently. And I would give you one example. He would stand outside, not looking at the wind, but really following the wind so that the wind would touch his skin. So he followed. And if you look at him, you know the direction of the wind. How beautiful is that? And because he's nonverbal, he cannot tell me. So I couldn't ask him at first why he's out there doing this. So I had to go out and stand right behind him and just follow him, right? And by following him, you understand what is going on with his skin. And so I think all of these experiences, the different experiences, really built or gave me the foundation to write, but I didn't know I was writing. Really, there were just notes, and that's why when my friend who took the notes I had to the publisher, first I didn't know that publisher existed, Libre Expression. I didn't know that company at all, and the papers. It was just a pile of papers. I didn't know at all. There was no title. There were no pages because I didn't know how to put the pages on paper. And a friend of mine brought a printer, and we printed 3 copies, one for me, one for her, and one for the other friend who took it to the publisher. So I had no idea. They were just notes. And then by, I don't know, some kind of miracle, they accepted the manuscripts right away. And then from that same year, 10 countries bought the rights for the book. And all of a sudden, I became a writer. And and I asked, I said, what do you do? As a profession, what do you do? What was expected from me as a writer? What do you do? And they said, well, you talk to your readers. That's what you do. And I said, okay. And I just follow the program, I would say. And then there were 10 countries, and then 20, and then 30, and then 45 countries today. And I get to travel, meet with readers from all those places. And every time I'm fascinated that you know that I existed. I'm like, how could this be possible? But of course, it's the work of my publisher. I don't know what they've done to get the book out there. And in the midst of, I don't know, millions of books, why you chose my book? Is it because of the color pink? Is it because of blue? Is it because the cover is beautiful? How did you come to the book? And I'm touched every time. If I could, my dream would be to write down every single reader, and draw the line between them, how they arrived to the book, and when did they see the book the first time, and why they picked it up and opened, the first page and took it home. And give it a place in a house, right? Because it takes up space. So thank you so much for being here. And before, at 4:30, I think, no, 4:45, the organizer said, oh, we have to go to the green room upstairs. And I said, why? Because in my mind, nobody would be here. So there would be just the two of us talking to each other. So I said, we don't need to go upstairs. It was just the two of us. And then I come down and you were all here. So who paid you? Like, is it the publisher? Are you all friends of the publisher of some sort? It's incredible. No, I know, you love Canada, that's why. Sorry, was that the question? Oh yeah, how I came to writing.
근데
Yes.
이미 대답을 너무 충분히 잘 해주셨죠. 그리고 저는 진짜 말씀을 들으면 들을수록 정말 입이 떡 벌어지는, 그러니까 말하자면 또 제가 자꾸 비유를 이상하게 늦게 배운 도둑질 이런 이상한 비유를 지금 또 들어야 될 것 같은데, 주성치 영화를 보면은 되게 무림의 고수가 되기 위해서 주성치가 이제 그 무술의 스킬을 배우는데, 이상한 데서 이렇게 그 스킬을, 그러니까 전혀 무술과 연관이 없을 것 같은 영역에서 그 무술의 스킬을 연마한단 말이죠. 근데 정말 작가님도 아드님을 스쳐가는 어떤 바람의 방향에서, 그리고 요리를 만들면서, 운전하다가 잠시 정차해 있을 때 졸음에 저항하기 위해서, 그리고 통역과 번역을 공부하는 어떤 그 과정에서, 그러니까 소설을 쓰는데 필요했던 어떤 그 태도 하나를 정말 그 삶의 단면에서 너무나도 잘 이렇게 자기 것으로 체화해서 이러한 글을 만들어내고, 또 그것이 이렇게 너무나 많은 정말 전 세계의 사랑을 받고 있는데도 여전히 믿지 못하는 어떤 불신에 찬 모습으로 여기 왜 오신 거냐고 이렇게 막 묻게 하는 어떤 이러한 정말 너무 좋은 의미로 이상한 사람을 만들어낼 것 같다는 생각을 하지 않을 수 없고, 너무 웃기면서도 너무 아름답고, 또 여차하면 진짜 쿡 찌르면 울 수도 있을 것 같아요. 네.
But that's why I arrived a little bit late, because I wanted to eat the ice cream. And I said to Sun Yan, my liaison, I said, nobody will be there. Why are you so stressed to be there on time? And don't worry so much. Nobody will be there. Maybe my publisher. But that's all, or maybe someone from the embassy who are forced to be here, maybe with me. And she said, no, they are telling me to be on time. But this being said, I will tell you that because I didn't have access to words for in my childhood. I had the chance to be born in a family with many books, a lot of books, and you know, in a zone of conflict, it's a true privilege to have access to books. So I had books all over. There were books hidden behind the toilet bowl, even because we live in a big tower with my uncles, aunts, and many, you know, we were many families basically in the same tower. And so my uncle, who was younger, he was not allowed to read certain books. And I knew that he would take those books and hide them behind the toilet, right? So I go behind the toilet and I look at those books without understanding, but I had access to all these books. But starting from age 7 to 10, with the communists, all the books were burned, right? We were not allowed to read. And all of a sudden, I no longer have access to words. And then when I first arrived in Quebec, of course, books were all available all of a sudden, but then I didn't own the language. So I have to learn one word at a time. And I give you one word. It's in French, it's R-E-B-E-L-L-E, is rebel, you know? But in French, it's said rebelle. And belle, well, you know the meaning of belle, right? The song, the Beatles, Michel, ma belle, right? So belle, everybody knows the word belle, to be beautiful. And then I had learned the language that when you have re in front, it means repeat, right? So I thought that rebelle means to be beautiful again. So usually I always look up in the dictionary. But when I met that word, I thought I knew the definition already. I didn't look in the dictionary, and I wrote a whole text for my class about that word, thinking that it meant to be beautiful again, redemption, how to regain your beauty once you've lost it. And of course, rebelle means a rebel. It's rebellion. It comes from the word rebellion. It has nothing to do with becoming beautiful again, right? So of course, the teacher called me into the office and gave me 0 for my text, right? But I still think that the word itself, even though it means rebellious, it's so beautiful. And there's a certain tenderness to the word because I didn't know the definition. And the same thing with the word melancholia. I just thought, it must be music. I thought the word was related to some kind of music, but it has nothing to do with music. And when I saw the definition, I was so mad. I said, why sadness? Come on, it's such a beautiful word. Why do you give a bad definition to this word, right? So I have this love for words. I think words have this power, right? To give us sound, to give us an emotion, an understanding, a knowledge. And so I can spend the whole day just reading through the dictionary, you know, flipping through the pages and learn words and meeting words. To me, it's a meeting, it's an encounter when you find a new word. And my new love, I've met my new love 3 years ago, and he is someone who owns a lot of words. So I asked him as a gift that every day to give me one word, one new word, or to remind me of a word. And yeah, so and I have a notebook where I would write down the words that he would give me every day. Something new or old, it doesn't matter, but to think of a word to give to me as a gift. And to me, it's the biggest gift, but because every word carries so much, you know, the whole history, how it had been created for us. And so maybe that's where the writing came from for this love of words. And then after that, I just love humans. I think we are so crazy, humans. We are so contradictory. We have emotions at the same time, good and bad, and glorious and so pitiful. Everything at the same time. And so humans fascinate me. For me, when I write, is to bring out the beauty of us, of how complex and sophisticated and totally irrational. So I just love to talking about humans, how we are and what we can be. That's it. So I guess that's why I love writing so much.
진짜 말씀을 들으면 들을수록 그 소설을 더 잘 이해하게 되는 느낌이 들게 되는 것 같아요. 이렇게 다중 언어를 사용하게 될 수밖에 없었던 어떤 삶의 경험들 때문에 자연스럽게 책 속에 불어와 베트남어 그리고 또 영어가 이렇게 자연스럽게 어우러지면서 다양한 뉘앙스를 전달해주는 소설로 탄생할 수 있었고, 제목에서부터 굉장히 중의적인 제목을 이렇게 담고 나오잖아요. 그런데다가 또 단어를 너무나 사랑해서 연인으로부터 매일 단어 하나씩 선물 받는다는 에피소드 너무 진짜 너무 부럽고 좀 짜증도 나고.
No diamonds.
근데 그 만이라는 소설에 나오죠. 그 흐벨이라는 단어가 원래는 이제 말씀하신 대로 다시 아름다워지는 뜻으로 이해했는데 알고 보니까 저항하다라는 뜻이어서 당황했다는 에피소드가 이제 만에 잠깐 표현이 되는 걸로 알고 있는데, 근데 저는 자세히 이렇게 곰곰이 생각해 보면 아름다움이라는 것은 좀 저항성을 내포하고 있는 것 같다는 생각도 한편 들더라고요. 작가님 어떠세요? 저의 이런 해석이 어떻게 괜찮으실지.
I love having a moderator and meeting with journalists and readers because you all make me understand what I do better. I never, and I will quote you. I will say, yes, rebel and rebellious is the same. And yes, I will always remember you, and I will quote you on this because I had never thought about it. But you're right. Rebellious and rebel is exactly the same. It's not contradictory. And I remember I was invited to Madrid, and I spent the whole day meeting with different journalists. And there were 9 journalists between 9 o'clock in the morning and 6 at night, half an hour with each journalist. And I had the same interpreter for the whole day. And at the end of the day, she asked me, she said, how come journalist 3 and journalist 9 asked you exactly the same question? Exactly, because she was the interpreter. So she said, I repeated to you exactly the same question, and you gave 2 different answers. And I said, because did you hear the journalist 5? The analysis of journalist 5 was so beautiful. So I learned from journalist 5, and I became more intelligent with journalist 9. Right? So my answer became better later. So now I will quote you, and I will look so intellectual and intelligent. But you're right. Rebellious is, the movie director Guillermo del Toro. Yeah, he was interviewed at one time. I don't know in which magazine, but he said that optimism is a choice. And it's a radical choice, and it's a rebellious choice. Very often we think that optimism is tacky, it's not profound, it's not interesting, right, to be optimistic. It's better to criticize and to be negative. But he thinks that it's completely the contrary, because it's very difficult to be optimistic in our world, in in life in general, because living is so difficult, right? So he said, yeah, so optimism is a choice, and it is so radical to be optimistic, and that we have to be rebellious to be optimistic, and so yes, there's it's linked to how do we become beautiful again? How can we change the way we had acted before? In a country, if we had been at war, how can we repair this? How can we go forward and change the way we look at life so that we can stand back up and soar? And I think you have the secret. Korea has the secret, and I'm sure that there will be so many books studying the success of Korea. So for all the countries who want to stand back up. I don't know. I was going to say, I hope Vietnam will read it, but I'm not sure. Sorry. Oh, I didn't say that. Now I can no longer go back to Vietnam.
아니에요. 너무 좋은 말씀, 맞는 말씀 해주셨다고 생각해요. 루라는 소설을 보면은 정말 저항함으로써 다시 아름다워짐을 표현해주는 등장인물이 대화하면서 떠올랐는데, 아마 루 읽으신 분들은 다 공감하셨을 거라고 생각하는데, 그 소설 속에 안피라는 인물이 나오게 되죠. 이 안피가 누구냐면은 주인공 가족이 이제 베트남을 떠나서 망명의 길에 오르기 위해서 필요한 금부치가 들어있는 이제 어떤 보자기로 싼 어떤 금부치들이 있는데, 이제 소년 경찰들이 이제 몰려와서 수색을 시작하니까 그거를 숨기기 위해서 창밖에 이제 쓰레기 더미 같은 데다가 일단은 던져버리죠. 근데 이제 그걸 다시 찾아와야 되는데 여건이 허락치 않으니까 이웃이었던 이제 안피에게 그걸 좀 가져다 달라. 그 주머니를 가져다 달라라고 부탁을 하는데 정말 온전하게 가져다 주죠. 근데 사실 그렇게 어려운 시절에 더군다나 그런 어떤 재물을 보고 흔들리지 않기가 어려운 게 너무나 당연한 시절이잖아요. 근데 그 상황 속에서 안피는 그렇게 위험한 일을 조금의 주저함 없이 가져다가 주면서 도피할 수 있도록 도와주죠. 그래서 주인공이 이제 그게 너무나 이제 감명을 많이 받고 고맙기도 하고 해서 나중에 미국으로 찾아가서 이제 다시 안피에게 다가가서 그때 너무 고마웠고, 근데 어떻게 그렇게 그 순간에 이런 표현을 쓰죠. 영웅적으로 정직할 수 있었는가라는 질문을 던지게 되는데, 그때 안피의 대답이 또 굉장히 근사합니다. 그래야 내가 괴롭히고 싶은 소녀를 계속 볼 수 있기 때문에 라는 대답을 하게 되죠. 이 부분이 너무 감동적이었다라고 회상하는 독자분들이 많이 계신 줄로 아는데, 저는 이 안피 같은 인물이야말로 허벨, 정말 저항함으로써 다시 아름다워지는 인물이 아닌가라는 생각이 들었습니다.
In time of extreme difficulty, I would say that even for your own survival, and all of us, we were put into those so unhuman, I would say, inhuman situation. It's so easy to lose your humanity. It's so easy to lose your dignity. It's so easy to lose your honesty. You can be an honest person, usually, but when you are hungry, when you are being hunted, when you lose all of that, right? Because you have to rise above your first instinct. And the first instinct, of course, in those circumstances is that you find gold. And we all needed that gold to flee. And my mother just reminded me yesterday, not yesterday, but last week. She said that she still doesn't understand why they would give us back our gold, our bag of gold. Not only that, but they needed that gold. And they borrowed some of it so that they could flee as well with us. No, not at the same time, but they also wanted to flee. They also needed that money to flee, but they didn't keep all that money. And I wanted to share that story to say that we can rise above our first instinct, our survival instinct, even under extreme circumstances. So that story to me was just to remind us, when we are stuck and we have to make a decision, we need to talk to ourselves and say, we have to keep our dignity no matter what. And so once that we arrive in Canada, they repay the gold that they borrowed from us. And, nobody thought that we would survive the trip. We all accepted that we would die. So borrowing is basically giving, sharing. Because nobody, and then once we survive, we didn't know that we would see each other again, that we will find each other again. And they arrive in Texas. We arrive in Montreal. Because of technology, yes, we find each other again, but the possibility was almost zero. But we did meet again, and they continue to be really, dignified. And I know at that point in time, they had a very small salary. And the mother was a single mother with 4 boys to bring up. And they all had to go to school. And she works for minimum wage. So very little money. And even then, she sent money back to my parents as soon as she found us. And she said she had been looking for us so that she could give us back money. It's incredible. And the other story I would tell you that it's when we first arrived in Granby in Quebec, my parents couldn't go to the French class, and because they already spoke French, so they were not allowed to go to that class. And if you don't go to that class, you don't have a salary. The government usually gives you, I think, $40 a week to go to school to learn French. And we were not in an apartment yet. We just arrived, so the government sent us to a hotel, and we stayed there. And the owner of the hotel, who was also the director, the manager, he knew that we didn't have any revenue because we couldn't go to school. So what he did was he gave my father a job. And I remember that day that my father came into the room, asked us to all sit down together, and he said, "We are so lucky. The manager has given me a job." And the job was to clean the stairs of the emergency stairs of the hotel. And the hotel was very small. There were only 4 floors. So a full-time job, 8 hours a day, just to clean the 4 staircases. So what do you do? So my father said, maybe I have to clean with a toothbrush, so that it would last 8 hours a day. And it's an emergency staircase. So nobody uses that staircase. So, and we understood then that the director, he gave this job to preserve the dignity of my father, of our family, because it was easy for him just to give us money. But when we give money, we are in the position of a dominant, right? And want it or not, we take away a little bit of the dignity of the person who is receiving our gift. And so he found this way to give him a job so that he could give my father money for the family. And he also knew that with this first job in Canada, it would give you a second job because you have a reference. And then it will give you a third job and a fourth job. And that's how we started. And so we learned dignity, from so many people, how to preserve dignity, even in difficult circumstances. Yeah. Sorry, I don't even know why I'm telling you this story. Oh yes, because of Anfi. Yes, so it's so precious, as lessons in life. And yeah, so I want to share, when I write, is really to share the beauty of us. When I talk to you about the beauty, is that we are capable of being grand, of being extraordinary. So yeah, along the way. And I was going to tell you another story, but I let you ask me a question. Because it's so much more interesting to hear your question.
아, 진짜 정말 너무 소설도 소설인데 지금 들려주시는 이야기 하나하나가 진짜 너무 뭐라고 설명해야 할지 참 모르겠는데 참 이런 에피소드들이 이제 작가님 안에 너무나 많아서 이런 이야기를 쓰실 수 있는 사람이 된 것 같다는 느낌이 계속해서 강하게 듭니다. 이러한 어떤 이민자 정체성 때문에 이렇게 양국의 문화를 동시에 포용하는 그런 글을 쓰시고 또 그런 사람으로서 이렇게 살아가고 있는 것처럼 보여지는데요. 이렇게 두 문화의 경계에서 오가면서 이렇게 작품 활동을 하시면서 혹은 그냥 그 정체성을 지닌 하나의 사람으로서 삶을 살아가는 와중에 특별히 어렵거나 극복하기 힘들었던 점은 없으셨는지 그것도 한번 들어보고 싶습니다.
Okay, and now you're gonna say, she is strange, and maybe, what I'm gonna tell you is that since I arrived in Quebec, all the dreams have come true before I could dream them. Because you need a lot of knowledge in order to dream, right? For example, I didn't know how to become a lawyer. And I didn't know that the law firm which recruited me existed. So I could not have dreamed of being an employee there. Whereas all my friends in school, they knew about that law firm. And they said, that's the biggest law firm. We want to be, part of that law firm. But I didn't go into law school to become a lawyer because I studied translation and I was so bad that I couldn't go back into science. And I did get my diploma from translation, not because I was good enough, but I think because it was the only way for me, as for them, to kick me out, yes, and to never have me come back, right, is to give a diploma. Because they gave me so many zeros. And I keep hanging on, and no, I can do this. I will try again. And they said, oh my God, she is shaming our department because I made so many mistakes. I was such a bad student in translation. I didn't know English. And so if you don't know English, how can you translate into French? And I didn't master French. So basically I was just being present, but not knowing what I was doing. And so that's why they gave me the diploma. Please leave us, don't come back. And so my brothers applied for law school because they knew that I could not go into science. And so I went into law school just to get my marks up so that I can go back into science. So I went there, but I didn't know, because I didn't know any lawyers in real life, so that I could ask questions or ask them how to become a lawyer. Whereas most of the students in my class have, a father, a mother, an uncle, a friend, lawyer, so they all know the system. but I didn't. And so I just went there and I worked a lot. I worked about 100 hours a week at the same time than law school. So I fell asleep a lot in my class. And then all of a sudden, I just follow people. They apply for a job, so I apply as well to all the law firms. And then everybody was very nervous, but I didn't know that it was articling. You need to go work for a law firm for 6 months before you can become a lawyer. I didn't know. I thought it was just a summer job. I thought it was a photocopy job. And I already had a job. I didn't need to go photocopying. But because everybody was doing it, so I did it too. And I went there, and this law firm recruited me, not because I was good enough. And they tell me at the interview, I went in, there were 7 big male lawyers, really tall. I went in and I said, why is it so serious for a summer job? And and I laughed. I said, why so many of you, to meet with me? And they said, your profile is not good enough. You're not a good enough student for us. And I said, why did you call me then? And they said, well, because we wanted to know who dared to lie so much on her resume. And I said, what do you mean lying? Because most people have ordinary job, whereas I was an immigrant. So I took all kinds of jobs. Nothing was connected. So at the end, they offered me the job because they said, okay, I know that you can work 25 hours out of 24. So we take you. And that's how I became a lawyer. But I didn't know about it. So all my dreams became true before I could dream them. And I gave you this one example. And so since I'm in Canada, it has always been that. The problem or the challenges was that all the jobs I got were way beyond, what I could do. So I had to learn very quickly. And that was the only problem. Like writing. All of a sudden they say, you're a writer. And I'm like, what do I do? So I have to learn very quickly, what do you mean by being a writer? And I remember the first time I went to Paris, it was at the beginning of my career as a writer. And the newspaper, Le Monde, I don't know if you know, it's so serious, very intellectual. And so they make me sit down at the Café des Éditeurs. And, the French, they're very serious when you talk about literature. And I didn't know anything. I just got there and I'm like, hi. And, just a happy Canadian. And I'm like, oh my God, that's weird. They don't like happy people. And I sat down, and the French, they never ask questions directly. They don't ask you, which color do you like? What's your favorite color? Never like that. They start, in the 1700s, colors travel by boat from whatever. And so you have the whole history of color before they ask you, what's your favorite color? And so I love that because I learned so much. It's like a class. And the question was very long. And I was taking notes, so impressive. And then, so she asked me, why do you write the way you write? All in small pieces and fragmented and all of that. And I didn't know. I had not studied in literature in order to lie, to have the right terminology to tell a story. I don't know. And I just looked at her and I, how would I say it? I took advantage of my Asian face to be like a shy person, So I just went like, oh. And so that I had time to think, I was like, And then she said, well, I'm sorry, I mean, how did you deconstruct your text and the line and I don't know, I don't know what she said. And I was just like, oh. And after 5 minutes, I couldn't handle it anymore to be shy. So I said, well, I wrote the way I wrote because I didn't know what I was doing and that's why it came to be this way. And she looked at me and said, what do you mean? Like an author saying, you don't know what you're doing? And I said, I didn't even know if it was a novel or a biography. I didn't know what was the difference between the two. And she was like, oh my God, this is a mess. Because Paris gave me an award for someone who didn't know what she was doing. And she said, no, I'm sure that you had this. And she gave me a structure. And so I learned from that structure, and I just repeated it afterwards at the awards. I said, oh, my structure, is... So I would say my struggle is that I have to learn to be what life is giving me. Same thing in the law firm. I was there, and then one senior lawyer called me up just because on the list of the lawyers, there were about 100 lawyers. I was the only one with a strange name, or a name which was not French or English. So he called me up and he said, which language do you speak? And I said, well, French, English, and a little bit of English and a little bit of Vietnamese. That's it. And he said, we have a project in Vietnam. Do you want to come along? And I said, yes. And I didn't know what it was. And then he said, well, the project would be with the 10 advisors to the Prime Minister on reform policies, and it's called whatever. I didn't understand what he was saying. So, of course, I said, yes, I'm going with you. And that's how, I was involved in the first flagship project between the government of Canada and the government of Vietnam. And I had no idea. I just said yes. And then all of a sudden, I was in Vietnam and talking to the Prime Minister. I'm like, huh? I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm here, So I had to learn a lot, and I didn't sleep very much. Because everybody thought that I spoke Vietnamese. And I did, but my Vietnamese was a 10-year-old. And I went back and I had to talk about the Constitution. Oh my God. They gave me the Constitution in Vietnamese and I don't know what that word meant. So I had to look in the dictionary all night long so that the next day I could go to the discussion. So you see, that's my struggle, that people think that I can do more than I can. So I've been very lucky. And this being said, I'm not saying that in Canada we don't experience discrimination or racism. But in my case, personally, I think that if my books didn't bear the name Kim Thuy, but a normal name, not normal name, but an English or a French name, probably the journalists would not have opened them. And I would be just one of the tens of books that they receive every day. But because of my name, because I was just different, and because of the title, probably, of Rue, it was opened. And because they opened it, they read it, so they championed the books. So my difference has been an advantage up to now. And that's why I wanted to share that story in this book, that it is possible sometimes it is absolutely possible to see difference as quality or as something you add to a project, and not to see it as something, all of a sudden I lose all my English, but yeah, something bad. it can totally be positive. If we all consider that difference is positive, then it can be totally positive. And that's why I wrote this story about the experience I had with the Canadian government. Now I'm so serious, huh? Now you're like, okay, we're going home. Bye.
아, 진짜 여기서 되게 중요한 삶의 태도 하나 배운 것 같다는 생각 안 드세요? 뭔가, 네. 그러니까 이게 정말 작가님의 어떤 한 면모를 되게 내 것으로 체화하고 싶다라는 강력한 욕망이 드는 말씀을 해주셨어요. 그러니까 우리가 은근히 쫄보거든요. 그래가지고 사실 닥치면 해낼 수 있는 거고 닥치면 좀 고생스럽겠지만 어쨌든 할 수 있는 어떤 포텐셜이 다 있는데 우리가 지레 겁먹어 내가 될까? 안 될 것 같은데 나 너무 부족한데 라는 어떤 그 자기 안에 있는 그 불안함에 대한 인지가 너무 강하게 자기를 잠식해버린 나머지 어찌저찌 이렇게 고군분투하든 우왕좌왕하든 할 수 있는데도 불구하고 못하게 된 기회들이 사실 저부터도 너무나 많고 이거는 좀 고백 같은 건데 오늘 이 행사도 저는 처음에 약간 고사했거든요. 제가 못할 거라고 생각했어요. 왜냐하면 제가 바로 직전까지 해내야 되는 일들이 너무 많았고 이 짧은 시간 안에 내가 작가님에 대해서 잘 공부해가지고 행사를 잘 할 수 있겠는가 좀 자신이 없더라고요. 그래서 좀 어려울 것 같은데 라고 말씀을 드렸는데도 그래도 잘 해주실 수 있을 거다. 그렇게 용기를 주셔서 그러면 저도 한번 도와주시면 제가 용기 한번 내보겠습니다. 라고 이렇게 임한 거거든요. 저의 얼마 전에 저의 태도도 좀 다시 돌아보게 되고 그때 내가 그냥 김투희 작가님이랑 행사에 하는데 하실래요? 그러면은 나 잘 모르지만 좋아요. 이렇게 뭔가 잠깐 작가님처럼 할 수 있어. 재밌겠다. 예. 이렇게 할 수 있었을 텐데 나는 왜 무엇에 그렇게 겁을 먹었었던가라는 생각도 한편 해보게 되는 너무 너무 진짜 따라해보고 싶은 그런 태도를 방금 보여주신 것 같아서 여기 계신 분들도 그런 생각을 좀 많이 하고 계시지 않을까라는 생각이 들고 이제 이 질문 여기 준비한 질문 중에서 몇 개 하지도 못했는데 지금 3분밖에 시간이 안 남았어요. 그리고 이제 여러분의 질의응답을 하나라도 더 들어야 되니까 혹시 뭐 물어보고 싶은 질문이 있으신 분이 계시다면 조금 속도를 빠르게 해가지고 빠르게 질문하고 또 답변을 듣는 시간을 가져보면 좋겠습니다. 예, 앞에 계신 분 손 들어주셨네요.
안녕하세요. 저는 오늘 이 행사에 12시부터 와서 계속 이제 세 분의 캐나다 작가님들을 만나고 이전 두 프로그램은 모더레이터 한 분에 작가님 두 분씩 해서 이제 3명씩 진행을 했었는데 지금 행사가 가장 혼자 계신데도 불구하고 엄청난 에너지를 받은 것 같아요.
일당백을 하고 계시죠.
네, 그리고 뭔가 두 분이 굉장히 다른 듯 하면서 많이 시너지가 나는 그 모습이 너무 즐겁게 잘 봤고요. 저도 루라는 작품을 아주 몇 년 전에 읽었었는데 아까 작가님이 궁금해 하셨었잖아요. 그 독자들이 어떻게 본인의 작품을 만났었는지. 저는 생각해보면 일단 도서관에서 만났었고 그 정확히는 잘 기억은 안 나요. 근데 의뢰 짐작하신 것처럼 뭔가 그 디자인에 꽂혀서 그 책을 고르지 않았었나라는 생각을 하고 그리고 되게 잘 읽었던 기억이 납니다. 그리고 지금 이제 돌아봤을 때 앞에 놓여진 세 작품들이 다 한 음절로 된 제목을 이제 정하셨잖아요. 그게 그 또 제목이 두 프랑스어와 베트남어 두 언어의 중의적인 의미를 가지고 있다는 점에서도 되게 흥미로웠는데 그런 단어를 두 중의적인 의미를 가진 단어를 어떻게 정하시게 됐는지 그리고 제목을 먼저 정하고 글을 쓰셨는지 뭔가 이런 비하인드 스토리가 좀 있다면 더 들어보고 싶습니다.
You know, all Vietnamese is a monosyllabic language, so you never have more than one sound per word. So it's very easy for me to choose just one syllable because that's the language. And the difficulty is to find a word that would have a meaning also in French or in English. And I was very lucky to have found those almost accidentally, yes. And you know the title, I never know the title until the very end. And even for Man, I had a different title. It was already announced in the media of the title, and I changed it. And my publisher almost killed me, yes? But I said, no, the other title is wrong. I just feel that it's wrong. And I said, yes, but it's everywhere already. There were posters, they were everywhere with the different title. I said, no, you have to change it, you know. And so that was one. And this one is the same thing, you know. So the title is almost like a summary of the book to me. So I never know where the story goes. I'm the first reader of the story, and that gives me, you know, the urge to sit down and write because I want to know what happens to the character. So because I don't know before I write, so I have to write the book before I know the summary of the book, the title. So the title is really the last thing that I can find, you know, for the book. And the first page is always the last page that I write. So for all three, whatever you see on the first page, it was the last page that I wrote. And I didn't know. I always think, oh, I'm just writing. But once you're at the end of the book, you finally understand where the first page was. And so for all three, the first page was the last page, and the title was the last thing that I could find. And it comes to you. Just when, yeah, that's it. And M is, came because I kept repeating it, and then I said, it's the same word then to love. And I said, I disagree with M at first because M in the form, you know, in French, when you say M, it's almost like an order, you know. And I said, you cannot make anybody to love. You cannot tell people you have to love, right? So I said, this should not exist in the language. So I called my editor and said, how come in French you have this, you know, that you're forcing people to love? And she said, what do you mean we're forcing people to? And we discussed. And then afterwards I said, no, okay, in this book, I want to tell people, please love. And I'm begging you to love. And that's why finally the word became right, you know, for the title of this book. And if I could talk about just the fear, I'm scared of everything, you know, in life. And my mother knew this. So since I was little, she said, every time that you're scared and you think it's a monster in front of you, you run right towards the monster, because when you get so close to the monster, you don't see the whole monster anymore. You only see bits and pieces, and you don't know it's a monster anymore. And she said, you see, as you get to the monster, you realize that it was not a monster. And unfortunately, mothers are always right. So 99% of the time, no, 100% of the time, it's never a monster. So that's why I'm scared, but I think I die every time. But it's never the case. It's only in our imagination. So every time that I'm scared, I say yes. And it works every time. So thank you for being rebellious and rebel to come with me today. Thank you so much for doing this.
아, 네. 아, 진짜 정말 딱 1시간만 더 얘기하고 싶네요. 예, 근데 정해져 있는 시간 관계상 아쉽게도 끝인사를 드려야 될 것 같아요. 그리고 여러분 이제 사인도 받고 싶으시잖아요. 그래서 너무나 아쉽지만 작가님에게 오늘 이제 끝인사를 소감이 어떠셨는지 그리고 소감을 좀 이렇게 들어보고 싶네요.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I wish that, I could speak Korean and then I can talk to each of you in the parking lot because because we have to leave the room for the next event, I guess. And so I see that there's a parking lot. So if you want, we go to the parking lot or to the coffee in front. I saw there's a coffee shop and we can continue to talk. And, you cannot believe how grateful I am and how spoiled I feel that you have taken the time to come with me without knowing me. I guess it's the first time we meet, so thank you. But thank you is such a small word. It's not big enough. And merci beaucoup d'être venu. C'est vraiment un privilège. Merci. Et yes, thank you. How do you say that? Je aime. Thank you so much.
네, 저도 감사하다는 말씀을 더불어 드리고 싶고요. 함께 해주신 여러분께도 진심으로 감사드린다는 말씀을 시간 관계상 간단하게 드리면서 오늘 행사를 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 저 뒤쪽에서 사인도 받고 못 나눈 대화도 더 나누시면서 좋은 시간 보내셨으면 좋겠습니다.
Just one thing,
Yes.
I am so happy that I decided to be here with you instead of having dinner with the Canadian Prime Minister and the President and President Macron, two handsome men, yeah. But I prefer being with you. Thank you so much for being here. I was supposed to be at that dinner.
와, 한국이 마크롱을 이겼다. 야, 정말 영광스러운 자리입니다. 다시 한번 감사드립니다, 여러분. 고맙습니다.
Thank you so much.